Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome to tonight's Infowars Nightly News. I'm your host, Rob Dew, and today is Thursday, July 23rd, 2015, and here's a look at what's coming up.
Tonight.
There is a criminal element. It screams to them, come to our town, USA. We'll protect you from our terrible policemen. We'll protect you from these tough American laws.
As a mother pleads for border security, a smuggling operation is caught on camera.
As you can see, we're sitting on the side of the border right here, the Rio Grande Valley, or the Rio Grande River, I should say, in Laredo, Texas. There are people coming over in rafts across the border over to the U.S. side. This is actually happening right now. We just saw this. We just caught these guys coming across the border. They're jumping in. They just jumped in rafts. They're coming over 1, 2, 3, 4. They have big satchels.
And then the dummies that are dumb enough to use it are street pushers 20 levels down. They get thrown in private prisons, openly owned by the drug cartels themselves.
To celebrate the birth of our country and give a big thanks to all the info warriors out there, we are now offering free shipping on every item shipped out of the InfowarsStore.com warehouse. That's free shipping on all t-shirts, books, and DVDs. Free shipping on Molon Labe and 1776 belt buckles, which are also 25% off while supplies last. Free shipping on all of our InfowarsLife.com nutraceuticals. If it's in the InfowarsStore.com warehouse, it's shipping for free, all during the month of July. It's our way of saying thanks to the true heart and soul of this operation, who stand beside us and support us as we wage an info war for liberty and freedom for all. InfowarsStore.com, free shipping for the month of July.
Last night while I was putting my children to bed, I received 3 frantic texts from Joe Biggs. One of them even had a 911 in it, call immediately. And I called him to find out what was going on because I knew he was going to Laredo to cover the Trump visit. And he started to go into this story of how they were down by the river. They saw men actually crossing the river and then loading drugs into a car. If you haven't seen the footage yet, it's on our YouTube channel, the Alex Jones channel. And in an article from Paul Joseph Watson, the title of which is Caught on Camera, Illegals Smuggling Drugs into Laredo Before Trump Visit. And let me just tell you, what this video depicts is just a microcosm of the problem, what is going on in our country. Our border is wide open. Illegals, both nice and bad, are coming into our country. And a lot of bad ones are, and I'm going to get to the stats in a bit. But first, I want to roll the footage of what our reporters Josh Owens and Joe Biggs shot last night in Laredo, Texas.
As you can see, we're sitting on the side of the border right here, the Rio Grande Valley, or the Rio Grande River, I should say, in Laredo, Texas. There are people coming over in rafts across the border over to the U.S. side. This is actually happening right now. We just saw this. Cameraman Joshua Owen saw it over my shoulder as we were just reporting on Donald Trump coming in to talk about the unsecured border. This is breaking news. Right here, Infowars catches it.
All right, I'm getting it. Don't put your hand up.
We just caught these guys coming across the border. They're jumping in. They just jumped in rafts. They're coming over 1, 2, 3, 4. They have big satchels. And they're driving away in this. That was a red Ford Explorer, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Now, if you think that's the only time that drugs come across our border, you're sadly mistaken. And I'm going to get to the statistics about that and the amount of criminals that come across the border in addition to the drugs. But Donald Trump is receiving a lot of flack for what he said about illegal immigration and why he wants to build a wall at the border. But let's look at what he actually said. Here's his quotes. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and I assume are good people. And some, I assume, are good people, he said. And he's right. There are some illegal immigrants that come to this country that aren't bad, even though they're doing it the wrong way and not coming in through the proper channels. But a lot of them are bad. Now let's take a look at the drugs that come into this country through Mexico. Mexican drug cartels make up to $29 billion annually from U.S. drug sales, with 90% of the cocaine that enters America transiting through Mexico. The majority of marijuana, methamphetamine that are sold in the U.S. also come from Mexico. $29 billion. Now, let's just look at pot. They're starting to legalize it in some states. Colorado, for instance, last year, in their fiscal year, they made $53 billion in tax revenue from marijuana alone. That's just in marijuana sales. Now, multiply that times 50, and you're going to get a number of $2.6 billion in potential tax revenue to the United States. And if you add also the tax money that's going to house nonviolent criminals who are selling marijuana or buying marijuana or caught using marijuana, you're going to have untold billions in revenue in this country that we could spend on a whole host of other things. And then you can make the argument, well, should we legalize all drugs? And that's an argument that you can make at any time, because anytime you have prohibition, it creates a black market and people are still going to buy this stuff. And now I want to look at the crimes that are happening just in the state of Texas with illegal aliens. This is just the last few years. PJ Media has this exclusive. This is an unreleased internal report from the Texas Department of Public Safety. They say illegal aliens committed 611,000 unique crimes, thousands of homicides and sexual assaults, and of that, nearly 3,000 homicides. And that's the Texas Department of Public Safety's own statistics. Now take a look at this graph that they also included in there, and it shows the stats across the United States. Tucson and the Rio Grande Valley seem to be the hotbeds for criminal activity, but you could see other states and other areas in states. El Paso's listed there, Laredo, where we saw our footage from earlier today, San Diego, Yuma, all these places. This is what's happening at the borders. This is where the criminals are coming in and they're doing crimes as soon as they get into this country, and they're not being caught, they're not being prosecuted, and if they do get caught, they're not being deported. Now, Leanne McAdoo has more.
Infowars caught shocking video of drugs being smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border, validating highly criticized claims by Donald Trump that illegal immigrants are bringing drugs into the U.S. Infowars reporters Joe Biggs and Josh Owens traveled to Laredo to cover Trump's highly publicized visit. While they were recording footage of the Rio Grande River, they spotted a group of illegals crossing the river on rafts. Moments later, we see one of the men nervously holding open the trunk of a red SUV, while four others frantically toss what is almost certainly drugs into the back of the car. Those men scurry back toward Mexico, while the vehicle speeds off into the U.S. Mexican drug cartels make up to $29 billion annually from U.S. drug sales, and this footage shows just how easily that transaction happens due to the porous nature of the border. Now, while this footage may be shocking to some, it's not at all surprising. In Texas alone, foreign aliens committed more than 600,000 unique crimes from 2008 to 2014. But the president has plans for even more amnesty by expanding the number of illegal immigrants allowed to stay in the country, shielding 80% of the nation's illegals from deportation, and he has even threatened to veto a bill that would strip sanctuary cities of federal funding. The bill aims to deny cities that refuse to enforce federal immigration laws certain Justice Department grants. The bill is a response to the shooting death of 32-year-old Kate Steinle. Convicted felon Francisco Sanchez was an illegal immigrant who had already been deported multiple times, but he was free to murder because sanctuary city San Francisco is under no pressure to enforce federal laws. Listen to the heart-wrenching testimony of Laura Wilkerson, a mother whose son was murdered by an illegal immigrant.
You're officially notified today there's a problem when this happens. You can't deny it any longer. You cannot stand by and ignore our families, our American families. You're elected by Americans, not any other country. You should be for Americans. I will not give up control another one of my children so that a foreign person can have a nicer life. Sanctuary city policies scream to the criminal element of illegals in this country. There is a criminal element. It screams to them, come to our town, USA. We'll protect you from our terrible policemen. We'll protect you from these tough American laws.
Can you imagine a parent having to go in front of Congress and just asking them to deport criminals? It's totally disgusting. Let's move on to some terrorism news. This is from Kurt Nemo. MI5 British defense sources say ISIS will bomb football games with drones. That's right, they're going to start turning the tables on us. A counter-terror advisor to the British government has told the tabloid The Daily Mirror Islamic State terrorists plan to use drones and attacks on music festivals and football games. I guess in this country we call it soccer. Earlier this year, a U.S.-led coalition in Iraq claimed to have destroyed an ISIS drone near Fallujah, so they do have that technology. They don't have reusable attack drones, but I think it's just a matter of time before they jury-rig surveillance drones into flying IEDs. Basically, they could turn them into little kamikaze drones, said Christopher Harmer, a senior naval analyst. So that's what we have to look forward to. Now ISIS is turning the tables on us and using drones. But what's going on here in this country? In this country, we have the Snoop Society, where people who work for the government, in addition to doing their jobs, whether it's pushing papers or running the infrastructure, now they're becoming little Stasi agents. That's right. Here it is from Mark Slavlo. Seattle's nanny state is deputizing trashmen as secret police to snoop through waste bins. In Seattle, where the city is now using trash collectors to snoop in trash cans to catch residents and businesses who are in non-compliance with the new requirements to compost materials that break down. That's right. If you throw an apple core, if you throw pineapple pieces into the garbage can, which normally most people do, not everybody composts, not everybody has a garden, even though that's a good idea. Now Seattle wants to make it mandatory that you put these in compost bins. It gets better. Of course, fines will follow for Seattle residents after an educational period where violators will be issued written warnings for actions as simply as tossing an apple core. That's right. You're going to get an educational period first, and then the beatings will continue until morale approves, which brings us to our next report from John Bound, talking about how President Obama and the minions and millions of minions behind him really loathe America and what it is and what it stands for.
Has anybody from the administration contacted you?
No, nobody has contacted neither my parents nor I.
Not the White House, not the president, not the vice president?
We have not heard a word.
Obama now has a proven track record of ignoring the tragedy associated with American lives due to his policies. When it comes to tragedy associated with division, President Obama is all over it.
If a white male teen was involved in the same kind of scenario, that from top to bottom, both the outcome and the aftermath might have been different.
Arms out to the side. Are you all? I don't have a weapon. Hey, teacher, you can't do that.
But when 5 Marines are killed on American soil by a radical jihadist domestic terrorist.
Have you heard from the president?
No.
Does that surprise you?
No.
Or a beautiful young upstanding American woman is gunned down in broad daylight in San Francisco.
Yeah, can I ask you if in the last 3 weeks President Obama has expressed his condolences to you or your family? Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. When there have been other very public deaths in this country, like Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and Freddie Gray, the president has expressed his condolences to the family. I would have expected him to do that here. He did more than express his condolences in those cases. He had a lot to say about those circumstances, I think because they tied into policies that he cared about, like gun control and alleged police profiling. And yet, when one of his policies with respect to immigration enforcement is at the root of a problem here that we're all discussing today, we don't hear anything from him, and you didn't hear anything from him, and I About the kindest thing I can say about that is that's incredibly disheartening and troubling to me.
The Obama administration doesn't contact families or even lower the flags at the White House until people start complaining. Lapdog media spinster Chuck Todd of NBC's Meet the Press recently declared,
"It turns out there is no evidence to back up Trump's now famous claim that immigrants are rapists and bringing crime in the United States. In fact, we couldn't find a single study that links violent crime and immigration."
Chuck Todd couldn't create a bigger lie even with Brian Williams helping him. Illegal immigrants accounted for nearly 37% of sentences in 2014, even though they only represent 3.5% of the U.S. population. Breitbart reports that even according to the United States' own criminal alien statistics, according to the United States Government Accountability Office, illegal immigrants represented 16.8% of drug trafficking cases, 20% of kidnapping, hostage-taking, 74.1% of drug possession, 12.3% of money laundering, and 12% of murder convictions.
Many of the ICE agents that I deal with feel like they have been handcuffed by this administration recently. Do you have that feeling also in the ICE agents that you work with?
Absolutely, I do. The line level officers in both ICE and us have the same desire, and that's to keep the community safe. So they took an oath. They have a mission. They're not being allowed to carry out that mission. That morale issue was discussed and addressed by the administration with a raise, but that is not what's giving the ICE officers at the line level poor morale.
Can you pay a law enforcement officer enough to ignore crime?
No.
We do it. We did it. I did it, or we do it for other reasons. We do it because we feel like we make our communities safer. We do it because we want to help people around us. We don't do it for another $1,000 a year in pay. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's, as I said earlier, it's a calling. We don't choose law enforcement, it chooses us.
Average American citizens are being lied to and ignored on an intolerable scale never before seen in the history of the United States. Impeach Obama. American lives depend on it. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Brain Force is here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. For example, the L-theanine inside of it, that is activated by the different compounds in the yerba mate that we put inside of it as well. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a car will run on one form of junkie gas, but it runs really good on what it's designed for.
And that's the principle of Infowars Life, as far as I understand, that you've always had, is that it's not about synthetic chemicals and forcing actions. It's about letting your body do its own thing and giving your body the tools it needs to create these different compounds that are super valuable and super beneficial.
You will find Brain Force and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.